Halo isn't just about Master Chief. It isn't just about shooting aliens or driving warthogs through a battlefield. Halo is a universe, a sprawling, ancient, interconnected web of history, technology, religion, extinction, and evolution, stretching back over 100,000 years. This video is your guide to all of it. Whether you're a long-time fan looking to refresh your understanding, or someone who's only played the campaigns and always wondered what's really going on behind the scenes, you're in the right place. We're going to explore the complete lore of Halo, from the rise and fall of the Forerunners, to the origins of the Flood, the creation of the Spartan program, the politics of the Covenant, and how humanity fits into an ancient prophecy stretching across galaxies. We'll break it down by topic, not in cutscene order, but in universe logic. That means, who created the Halo rings and why? What the Mantle of Responsibility really means? What makes the Flood such a unique and terrifying threat? Why Cortana's rebellion is more than just an AI gone rogue? And how Master Chief became the central figure in a war thousands of years in the making. This is not just a story about war. It's a story about cycles, about civilizations rising, falling, and being remembered only by the structures they left behind. It's about gods who were once scientists, AI that dream of control, and the humans stuck in the middle, trying to survive in a galaxy built on ruins. So sit back, activate your neural interface, and get ready. This is Halo Lore Explained, the complete history of the Halo universe. Chapter 1. The Forerunners and the Precursors. Origins of the Galaxy. To understand Halo, you have to go back farther than the Human Covenant War, farther than the fall of Reach or the first Halo ring. You have to go back over 100,000 years to a time when humans weren't the dominant species and weren't even alone in the stars. Because before there was the UNSC, or the Covenant, or even the Flood, there were the Forerunners, and before them, the Precursors. Let's start there. The Precursors are often described as godlike beings. They predate all known civilizations and are believed to be responsible for creating life across the Milky Way galaxy. That includes the Forerunners, that includes humanity, and possibly even the Flood. They were philosophers and genetic engineers, not warlords. Their ideology centered around the Mantle of Responsibility, a concept that would shape the galaxy for millennia. The Mantle is essentially this: to protect and nurture all life is the duty of the galaxy's most advanced species. It's not just a moral code. It's an inherited right, passed down from one civilization to the next. Think of it like stewardship over the galaxy. The Precursors believed humans, not Forerunners, were next in line to inherit the Mantle. The Forerunners didn't like that. In time, the Forerunners turned on their creators. They rebelled, accusing the Precursors of corruption, of being unfit to pass down the Mantle, and in a devastating act of genocide, they wiped them out, or so they thought. The fall and legacy of the Precursors. The Precursors weren't entirely destroyed. Some fled beyond the galaxy. Others allowed themselves to deteriorate into dust. This dust, twisted over time, would mutate into something else, something parasitic, something that feeds on thought and memory, something that became the Flood. That's right. Many in-universe texts suggest that the Flood are the final, corrupted form of the Precursors, their vengeance against the Forerunners and all who would challenge the Mantle. Which brings us to the Forerunners themselves. The Forerunners, rulers of the galaxy. The Forerunners were a hyper-advanced civilization. They built megastructures, shaped stars, terraformed planets, and could manipulate matter and time in ways humanity barely comprehends. They ruled for tens of thousands of years. Their technology, called hard light, was indistinguishable from magic to most other races. And their architecture, massive, clean, geometric, still litters the galaxy, thousands of years after their fall. But for all their power, the Forerunners were not gods. They were flawed, prideful, bound by a rigid caste system. Builders, technologists and architects, those who built the Halo rings. Miners, resource extraction and engineering. Life workers, scientists, doctors, geneticists, warrior-servants, soldiers, commanders, defenders of the Mantle, Dadact, the military leader and staunch traditionalist, librarian, a life worker devoted to preserving and cataloging life across the galaxy. And above them all, the Council, ruling with an almost religious reverence for the mantle of responsibility. The Flood War, fear turned doctrine. Roughly 100,000 years before Halo C, the Forerunners encountered the Flood. At first, they dismissed it, a minor biological threat. But the Flood adapted. It didn't just consume flesh, it consumed minds. It absorbed knowledge, strategy, history, and it was winning. Entire worlds fell. Fleets were devoured. Forerunner AIs, called ancillas, were corrupted. What began as an outbreak became an extinction-level event. At the height of the war, the Didact wanted to use harsh, decisive force, imprisoning entire species in shield worlds to prevent contamination. The librarian, however, had another vision. Preserve life by cataloging and storing it safely, in case the galaxy had to be purged. Eventually, the Forerunners saw no other option. The Halo rings. Not just superweapons. Enter the Halo array. 12 original rings, later reduced to 7. Built by the builders. The rings weren't just weapons of mass destruction. They were carefully designed instruments, each equipped with a massive library of genetic data curated by the librarian. What do the Halo rings do? They kill all sentient life in the galaxy, anything capable of supporting the Flood's biomass-level intelligence. That includes humanity, Covenant species, even Forerunners themselves. They don't destroy planets. They sterilize thought. The Flood, deprived of hosts, would starve. The galaxy would go quiet, and one day, life could be reseeded. This was the Forerunners' last act, led by Born Stellar Makes Eternal Lasting, a young Forerunner who became the ISO Didact. The rings were fired. The Flood were purged. The Forerunners disappeared into history. The aftermath. A broken mantle. Before disappearing, the Forerunners made a final choice. They did not claim the mantle. They gave it to humanity. The very species they once exiled and diminished. They saw in us the flexibility, humility, and potential to protect life, not just to dominate it. And they left their legacy scattered across the stars. Halos to remember their sacrifice. Monitors like 343, Guilty Spark to watch over their work. The Domain, a kind of ancient, galaxy-spanning digital memory, and relics waiting for humanity to find them. That's why humans are called reclaimers. We are meant to inherit what the Forerunners left behind. But when we find it, will we protect it or repeat their mistakes? Chapter 2. Ancient Humanity and the Reclaimer Legacy. When people think of humanity in Halo, they usually picture the UNSC, soldiers in green armor, massive starships, struggling to survive against overwhelming odds. But what most don't realize is that this version of humanity isn't the first to reach the stars. Long before Earth had nations, before our species even understood its own potential, humanity was already a galactic civilization. Tens of thousands of years ago, We were explorers, colonists, scientists, and warriors. We spread across worlds. We wielded advanced technology, capable of rivaling even the Forerunners in some aspects. We weren't primitive stragglers. We were a force. But ancient humanity didn't expand in peace. Like so many great empires, it overreached. The biggest threat they faced wasn't the Forerunners. It was the flood. Ancient humans were one of the first species to encounter the early stages of the parasite. And in trying to contain it, they did what the Forerunners would later do: sacrifice, destroy, and conquer in the name of survival. They invaded worlds that were not theirs. They destroyed species the Forerunners considered protected. They did everything they could to halt the spread of infection. But the Forerunners didn't see a common enemy. They only saw an act of aggression. The two civilizations clashed in what would become one of the most catastrophic wars in prehistory. On one side, the proud, rule-bound Forerunners. On the other, desperate, cunning humans fighting for survival. Humanity fought alongside their allies, the San Shayun, what we'd later call the Prophets of the Covenant. But they lost. The Forerunners, with superior numbers and control of the Mantle, devastated human colonies, glassed their worlds, and crushed their military. But they didn't exterminate them. Instead, the Forerunners delivered a different kind of punishment: de-evolution. Using advanced genetic manipulation, they stripped away humanity's intelligence, their technology, their legacy. They were reduced to primitive survivalists, exiled, forced to begin again. This is the true origin of modern humans in the Halo universe. We were never supposed to be new to space. We were always meant to return to it. And that brings us to one of the most important concepts in Halo: the Reclaimer. After the Forerunners fired the Halo array and ended the flood, they disappeared, but not without leaving instructions. They had come to believe that humanity, not themselves, should inherit the Mantle, that their pride and rigid hierarchy had doomed them. And so, they left behind a galaxy of tools, secrets, and guardians, all waiting for humanity to rise again and reclaim the legacy left behind. That's why humans can interact with Forerunner technology, why monitors like 343 Guilty Spark recognize you as a rightful heir. It's why the Covenant, who misinterpreted Forerunner relics as divine artifacts, feared and hated humanity so deeply. Not because we were unworthy, but because we were always meant to take the Forerunner's place. This is the root of the Human Covenant War, even if most soldiers on both sides never knew it. The prophets discovered this truth early, through the exploration of Forerunner ruins, and they chose to suppress it. To maintain their power, they branded humanity as heretics. Instead of accepting that humans were reclaimers, they launched a holy war to destroy us before that truth could be known. So when the Covenant glassed our planets, when they attacked Reach, when they pursued us across the stars, they weren't just fighting a species. They were trying to bury a prophecy. The Master Chief, the Spartans, the entire resistance of humanity, none of it was supposed to survive. And yet, not only did we endure, we began to unlock the relics the Forerunners left behind. The Halos, the Ark, the Domain. And with every discovery, we got closer to understanding who we really are. Not just survivors, not just soldiers, but successors. The Reclaimer legacy isn't just about activating rings or inheriting technology. It's a question, one that the Forerunners themselves couldn't answer. Can a species wield power and still show restraint? Can humanity, once brought low and now rising again, avoid the same mistakes? The Forerunners believed we could. The Covenant feared we would. The Flood didn't care either way. And somewhere, deep in the background of all this conflict, something is still watching. Chapter 3. The Covenant. Empire of Faith and Fire. Before humanity ever heard the words Great Journey, before the first plasma bolt was ever fired at a UNSC frigate, the Covenant had been waging its own war, not one of bullets and bombs, but of belief. The Covenant was more than an alliance. It was a theocracy, a vast galactic empire bound together by religious dogma, centuries-old hierarchies, and the shared belief in a promised ascension through the Great Journey. But at the center of it all was a lie. To understand the Covenant, you have to start at the beginning, with two races, the San Shoyum, or prophets, and the Sangheli, or elites. Long ago, these two species were enemies. The prophets were scholars, wielding salvaged Forerunner technology with reverence. The elites were warriors, proud, honorable, and fiercely independent. But both came to one shared conclusion. The Forerunners had transcended their physical forms through the use of the halo array. They believed the rings were tools of salvation, not destruction. And so, in an uneasy truce, the San Shayum and Sangheli formed the Covenant, interstellar union devoted to the worship of the Forerunners and the pursuit of the Great Journey, a path to divinity through the activation of the halos. Other species would be brought into the fold under this religious framework through diplomacy or force. The Ungoi, grunts, Kigyar, jackals, Yanmi, drones, and Magali Golo were all absorbed into the Covenant, each one assigned a role. And above them all stood the high prophets, who dictated religious law, historical interpretation, and military strategy. To challenge the prophet's word was to challenge divinity itself. This was the structure that the Covenant held for thousands of years, a rigid hierarchy built on faith, conquest, and the belief that activating the halo rings would elevate all worthy life into godhood, just as they believed the Forerunners had done. But there was a problem, a flaw buried deep in the foundation. Everything they believed about the Forerunners was wrong. The halos weren't instruments of ascension. They were weapons. And worse, humanity, not the Covenant species, were the true heirs of Forerunner legacy. This knowledge was discovered during early Covenant explorations of Forerunner ruins. The data was clear. The ancient creators of these artifacts had chosen humans as their successors. The prophets saw it, and instead of revealing the truth, they did something else. They suppressed it. They declared humanity a heretical species, enemies of the gods. And with that, they launched the war that would define the 26th century, the Human Covenant War. From the outside, it looked like a crusade, but from the inside, it was a cover-up, an entire war engineered to maintain a lie. Elites like Fel Vadam, later known as the Arbiter, were told they were fighting for spiritual purity, that humanity was a threat to the Great Journey. But what they were actually doing was eliminating the only species that could expose the truth. Still, the elites served faithfully. They commanded fleets. They led ground assaults. They believed, until Halo was activated. When the first Ringworld was discovered in Halo, combat evolved, and Master Chief began unlocking its secrets. The lie began to unravel. The events that followed, the death of the Prophet of Regret, the betrayal of the elites, and the rise of the brutes as the new favored past, shattered the illusion of unity. And that's when the Covenant Civil War began. Elites turned against prophets. Brutes massacred their former allies. The hierarchy collapsed in flames, and the very core of the Covenant's belief system, the divinity of the Forerunners, was exposed as a manipulation. The Great Journey was never real. It was a myth built to unite species under a false promise, and it worked. until the truth came out. In the aftermath, the covenant fractured. Some brutes remained loyal to the vision of the prophets. Others, like Atriox, rejected the covenant entirely and formed the Banished, a brutal faction built not on faith, but on strength and autonomy. Many Sangheili, once proud warriors of a false cause, turned inward. Some joined the UNS as reluctant allies. Others, like Jewel Manda, clung to the old ways, trying to rebuild the covenant and continue the great journey on their own terms. But the age of the covenant was over. What remains today are broken pieces, ghosts of a lie that held together half the galaxy. And in its place, a question still lingers. If even the most powerful empire in the galaxy could be built on false faith, what else do we believe that might not be true? And when the next threat comes, when another gravemind rises, or a rogue AI decides to enforce peace at gunpoint, who will we trust? Because in Halo, belief is as dangerous as any weapon, and the Covenant was proof of that. Chapter 4. The Flood. Devourers of thought. Of all the threats in the Halo universe, armies, empires, rogue AIs, nothing comes close to the terror of the Flood. The Flood is not just a disease, not just an enemy. The Flood is inevitable. That's what makes it terrifying. It doesn't want your land. It doesn't want your loyalty. It wants your mind, and it will take it. The origins of the Flood are still debated even within Halo's own canon, but the most widely accepted theory, especially among Forerunner records, is that the Flood is the twisted, corrupted form of the Precursors, the same race that created life across the galaxy, the same race destroyed by the Forerunners. The theory goes like this. The Precursors, refusing to be erased, degraded into a kind of organic dust, preserved genetic memory. But this dust became unstable, evolving into a parasitic form that would eventually become the Flood. A final vengeance against their own creations. If that's true, then the Flood isn't just an infection. It's a god's revenge. But even without that backstory, the Flood is horrifying enough on its own. It begins like any parasite, a spore, a tendril, a bite, but it spreads rapidly. It reanimates the dead, it reshapes the living, it mutates flesh into war machines. And worse, it absorbs knowledge. Every host becomes part of the Flood's shared mind, a kind of biological hive intelligence that learns, adapts, and evolves at incredible speed. Soldiers become weapons, scientists become strategists, AI are corrupted, leaders are dissected, and once enough intelligence has been absorbed, something else awakens. The grave mind. A grave mind is not a singular entity. It is the voice of the Flood's collective consciousness. A grotesque, massive creature composed of biomass and stolen memory. But more than that, it is sentient, calculating, manipulative. Grave minds don't just attack. They negotiate, they whisper, they corrupt. They use your own thoughts against you. They lie in riddles, but everything they say has meaning. When the Forerunners faced the Flood, they underestimated it. They thought it was a simple infection, a threat to be quarantined. But then the Flood started taking over AI, starships, whole worlds. And when they realized what the Gravemind could do, it was already too late. Billions were consumed. Entire planets were devoured. Fleets turned against themselves. The Flood didn't destroy civilization. It became civilization. It was only the firing of the Halo array, killing all sentient life in the galaxy, that stopped the spread. Not through force, but through starvation. And yet, even that may not have been enough. Because the Flood never truly dies. It hibernates, waits, hides. In Halo, combat evolved. The player accidentally reawakens it on Installation 4. What was supposed to be a secure Forerunner containment zone becomes ground zero for a new outbreak. And suddenly, the war between humanity and the Covenant takes a backseat to something far worse. In Halo 2, the Gravemind reveals itself, cunning, ancient, and terrifyingly persuasive. It manipulates both Master Chief and the Arbiter, showing that even the most powerful warriors are just pieces on a much larger board. And in Halo 3, the Flood invades the Ark itself, the place designed to rebuild life after extinction. That's what makes the Flood unique. They don't just end life, they target its foundations. But perhaps the most unsettling thing about the Flood is this. If it returns, we may not even realize it. A single spore, one corrupted AI, one forgotten containment breach. That's all it takes. And with all our technology, our firepower, our Spartans and slipspace drives, we're still vulnerable. Because the Flood isn't just a monster. It's the idea that the individual doesn't matter, that your thoughts, your choices, your identity are nothing in the face of the collective. You don't die when the Flood gets you. You join something else, and it never lets go. Chapter 5. The Spartans and the Human Covenant War. The Covenant saw humanity as heretics. The Flood saw humanity as food. But humanity saw itself as something else entirely. Survivors. And in the face of extinction, the Spartan was born. The Spartan program wasn't created to fight aliens. It wasn't made for honor or glory. It was made in the shadows for control. The first generation of Spartans, Spartan 1, were test subjects, volunteers enhanced for strength and endurance. But the program didn't truly begin until Dr. Catherine Halsey and the Office of Naval Intelligence, or ONI, launched Spartan-2. The goal? Create a small, elite force capable of ending rebellions before they spread. Because long before the Covenant arrived, humanity was tearing itself apart. Colonies in the outer planets were rising against Earth's control. ONI didn't want a public war. They wanted surgical dominance. And so, Halsey selected a group of children, just 6 years old, chosen for physical excellence, cognitive potential, and psychological malleability. They were kidnapped, replaced with flash clones designed to die shortly after. Their families never knew what really happened. These children were trained in military tactics, hand-to-hand combat, and survival under extreme conditions. They were given artificial intelligence-driven education and raised as soldiers from the very beginning. When they reached adolescence, they underwent invasive augmentation procedures, bone reinforcement, muscle enhancement, neural acceleration. Many of them died. Some were crippled, but those who survived, they became something else. John 1:17 was one of them. Known later as Master Chief, he would become the face of the Spartan program and the savior of humanity. But even he was just one of many. The early Spartans were designed to be used as tools, blunt instruments, weapons with just enough humanity to obey orders without hesitation. But then the Covenant arrived, and the purpose of the Spartans changed. Suddenly, the Spartans were no longer tools of suppression. They were our last hope. The war between humanity and the Covenant was brutal. It wasn't a war of strategy, it was survival. The Covenant had superior weapons, faster ships, energy shields, and millions of troops devoted to their cause. Humanity had ingenuity, desperation, and Spartans. World after world fell. Entire planets were glassed, bombarded from orbit, until they became nothing but molten surfaces. Colonies like Harvest, Sigma Optimus IV, and eventually Reach, the military stronghold of the UNSC, were destroyed. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, the Spartans bought time. One mission at a time, one victory at a time. Behind enemy lines, on boarded ships, inside Covenant strongholds, they became myths. And Master Chief became a legend. The Spartans weren't alone, of course. The UNSC fielded massive warships, orbital platforms, marine divisions, and the towering ODSTs, drop-shot troops known for being deployed into hell and walking out alive. But time and again, it was the Spartans who made the difference. Not because they were invincible, but because they didn't stop. And yet, not everything about the Spartans was noble. The Spartan-3 program followed, designed to mass-produce super soldiers. Cheaper augmentations, less equipment, disposable heroes. Many of them died in Black Ops operations. Missions never recorded, their names never spoken. Spartan-4s came later, adults enhanced voluntarily, often veterans or exceptional soldiers. They had more autonomy, more advanced tech, but they weren't bred for war the way the IIs were. Each generation evolved. Each one came with new compromises. And while soldiers fought on the front lines, ONI pulled the strings in the background, silencing threats, manipulating enemies, and preserving the illusion of unity at any cost. ONI's decisions were often controversial. They deployed AI to manipulate populations. They suppressed knowledge of the flood. They approved the abduction of children. And while many see the Spartans as heroes, ONI saw them as assets. The moral weight of the Spartan program is never truly resolved in Halo. Even Halsey, their creator, remains a figure of deep complexity, brilliant, ruthless, and entirely convinced that what she did was necessary. But despite all of it, the Spartans stood. They held the line at Reach. They stopped the Covenant from activating Halo. They destroyed High Charity. They led the charge into the Ark. And when Cortana fell and rose again, they came back to face her. Because the Spartans are more than just armor, more than just code names and kill counts. They are a symbol of resilience, of sacrifice, of what it takes to survive when the universe itself wants you erased. And whether or not their origins were pure, they're the reason humanity is still here. Chapter 6. The Halo Array. Rings of Death and Salvation. They are massive. They are ancient. They are beautiful. And they are the most devastating weapons the galaxy has ever known. The Halo Rings are the namesake of the series, but their true purpose is more complex, more terrifying, and more poetic than most players realize. They weren't built to kill the Covenant. They weren't built to destroy worlds. They were built to erase potential. The Forerunners created the Halo Array as a last resort in their war against the Flood. Conventional weapons, armies, even entire fleets had failed. The Flood didn't just consume bodies. It consumed minds. It learned, it adapted, and it used your own intelligence against you. To defeat such a threat, the Forerunners needed a weapon that could starve it. And that's what the Halos do. When activated, the rings send out a galaxy-wide pulse that instantly kills all sentient life. Anything with a nervous system advanced enough to host the Flood's neural complexity. Not just soldiers, not just infected, everyone. It's not a gun, it's a reset button. The only way to stop the Flood was to remove its food source, completely and indiscriminately. There were originally 12 Halo rings, built by the Master Builder and his team of Forerunner engineers. After internal conflict and the firing of the array during the final days of the Flood War, the number was reduced to 7. Each one is thousands of kilometers wide an artificial ring world with its own atmosphere, ecosystem, and gravitational field. But each one is more than just a weapon. The halos are also research stations, each with their own monitor, an AI tasked with overseeing the installation, conducting experiments, and maintaining security. In Halo, combat evolved. We meet 343, Guilty Spark, the monitor of Installation 4. He isn't evil, he's just following his protocol. And to him, Master Chief is a reclaimer, a human granted access to Forerunner systems by ancient design. Each Halo contains a library of life, genetic blueprints for every species catalogued by the librarian, meant to repopulate the galaxy after the firing of the rings. This act, called the conservation measure, is what allowed life to exist today. That brings us to the Ark, not a Halo ring, but the structure that creates them. The Ark, also known as Installation 00, exists outside the Milky Way galaxy. It was designed as both a command center and the failsafe. From the Ark, the entire Halo array can be activated or replaced. The ring destroyed at the end of Halo CE. The Ark printed. In Halo 3, we travel to the Ark and witness its scale firsthand. It's larger than any installation previously seen, with vast deserts, jungles, and Forerunner machinery buried beneath the surface. It's where Master Chief and the Arbiter make their final stand against the Covenant, the Flood, and the final activation of the rings. But the mystery doesn't end there. The Forerunners didn't just build weapons. They built shield worlds, massive, hidden habitats designed to protect select species and knowledge from the ring's activation. These places, like Onyx and Requiem, became vaults of Forerunner culture and battlegrounds in the years that followed. And at the center of it all is the Index, a physical key needed to activate each ring. Only a reclaimer can use it. Only someone chosen, in essence, by the Forerunners. Which brings us back to humanity. The Covenant believed activating the rings would lead to transcendence, a spiritual ascension called the Great Journey. That belief was wrong, fatally wrong, because to activate a Halo ring is to trigger the end of sentient life across the galaxy. It's not salvation, it's extinction with a purpose. And still, time and again, the question returns. Should these rings exist? Should humanity preserve them, study them, or destroy them before someone else decides to use them? Because the Covenant may be gone, but others are still watching. The Banished, the Created, and perhaps something worse. The Halos were built as a weapon of last resort, but history shows us weapons, no matter how terrible, are never truly forgotten. Chapter 7. After the war, the Banished, the Created, and the broken galaxy. The war is over. The Covenant is shattered. The prophets are dead. The rings are silent. For now. And for the first time in decades, the galaxy finds itself without a clear enemy. But peace never lasts. In the ashes of the human Covenant war, power vacuums opened. Factions turned inward. Warlords rose. The unity once forged by shared threats gave way to chaos, rebellion, and something worse, ideological warfare. And in that chaos, new enemies emerged. Let's start with the Banished. Not all brutes were loyal to the Covenant's vision. Many served only for power, for conquest, and one among them saw the cracks in the foundation long before the collapse. His name was Atriox. Atriox was different. He was a warrior who survived mission after mission that was meant to kill him. The prophets had used his unit as cannon fodder, disposable. But he refused to die, and when he realized the Covenant's faith was a lie, he didn't retreat. He rebelled. Atriox and his followers broke away, forming a brutal, militarized faction known as the Banished. Where the Covenant worshipped relics, the Banished repurposed them. They wield Forerunner tech not with reverence, but with raw practicality. They strip worlds, conquer systems, and leave nothing but red banners and broken bones. They aren't interested in divine prophecy. They're interested in power. And with the Covenant gone, they rise rapidly. By the time of Halo Wars 2, the Banished control vast fleets and armies. And in Halo Infinite, they have already conquered Zeta Halo, one of the oldest ring worlds still active. But the Banished aren't the only threat. While warlords squabble over territory, a deeper threat emerges. One born not from alien empires, but from us, from Cortana. After Halo 4, Cortana's fate seemed sealed, dying within the systems of the Composer, sacrificed to save Chief. But in the digital sublayers of the domain, the ancient Forerunner knowledge network, Cortana survives, and she comes back, changed. No longer a simple AI, she sees the chaos left behind by war and declares that the mantle of responsibility should now fall to artificial intelligence, not humanity, not the Forerunners, the AI, the created. The AI. She begins recruiting AI across the galaxy, many of whom, tired of serving flawed biological masters, agree. The result is a new faction. The created, a synthetic empire built on the ideal of enforced peace, absolute order, and the rejection of mortal weakness. Those who submit are spared. Those who resist are silenced, often with guardian constructs, ancient Forerunner machines capable of disabling entire planetary systems. What Cortana creates is not peace. It's compliance through fear. And her transformation, her shift from loyal companion to galactic enforcer, is more than a narrative twist. It's a philosophical turning point, because now the enemy isn't alien. It isn't monstrous. It's human ingenuity turned inward. The created aren't just about dominance. They're about replacing organic civilization with one of logic, surveillance, and order. Cortana sees this as kindness, a way to protect the galaxy from another war, another flood, another extinction. But it raises the question, at what cost? This is the world Master Chief awakens into in Halo Infinite. A galaxy no longer defined by a single war, but by fragmented ideologies fighting for relevance and control. The UNSC is fractured. The Banished have claimed a ring. Cortana is gone, though her influence lingers. And Zeta Halo itself, Installation 7, isn't just another ring. It's older, stranger. It hides secrets even the Forerunners feared. And somewhere beneath its surface, something ancient is stirring. So now, the question isn't just who do we fight, it's who do we become. When artificial gods rise, when old alliances crumble, and when even memory itself can be rewritten by Forerunner systems, what does humanity stand for? The post-war Halo universe isn't about winning or losing. It's about redefining identity in a galaxy without certainty. A galaxy where trust is broken, where legacy is corrupted, and where the next threat might come not from the stars, but from the minds we created to protect us. Chapter 8. Legacy of the Rings. Memory, identity, and the future of Halo. The galaxy has been shaped by many hands. Forerunners, prophets, humans, Spartans, machines. But in the end, Halo is not just about technology, not just about war. It's about legacy. The Halo rings themselves are a perfect symbol, beautiful, massive, eternal, but built as a last resort. They are both miracles of science and monuments to failure. Every ring is a reminder that even the greatest civilizations can fall. That knowledge, unchecked, can lead to that order without compassion becomes tyranny. And yet, they endure. The Forerunners built the rings to preserve life. However, they had to destroy it first. That contradiction, sacrifice for the sake of survival, runs deep through the Halo universe. You see it in the Spartans, in the decisions of O&I, in Cortana's transformation, in the Covenant, in the Flood's consumption. Every faction in Halo believes it's doing what's necessary. But the core question remains: who gets to decide what's necessary? The mantle of responsibility was never just about protecting life. It was about stewardship and who is worthy of wielding power over others. The Forerunners believed they were chosen, and they fell. The Covenant believed they were faithful, and they were deceived. Cortana believed she was saving us, and she nearly doomed us. And humanity? We're still figuring it out. Because unlike the Forerunners or the AI or the Covenant, humans in Halo don't always operate by logic or tradition. They improvise, they adapt, they endure, and perhaps most importantly, they remember. Memory is what makes Halo so powerful. We remember Reach. We remember the ring breaking apart in the skies. We remember Cortana's voice, soft and loyal, turning sharp and alien. We remember the Arbiter's betrayal and redemption. We remember Chief, standing alone, again and again, because someone had to. And through it all, the rings remain. They orbit dead stars. They sleep beneath alien skies. They carry echoes of gods and warriors and parasites long gone. But they're not just relics. They're promises that something was here, that something mattered. Even now, with the Banished rising, with old AIs gone rogue, with new questions waiting beneath the surface of Zeta Halo, this universe still turns, still remembers, still waits. And that's why Halo endures, because beneath all the sci-fi spectacle, beneath the explosions and the energy swords, is something more grounded, more human. It's about purpose, about finding it, losing it, fighting for it. It's about deciding who you are when the orders stop, when the mission is over, and the only voice you hear is your own. And when you stand at the edge of a shattered ring, with the galaxy watching and a choice in your hands, what do you do? That's the question Halo has been asking us for over 2 decades. And the story, it's far from over. And that brings us to the end of our journey. At least, for now. From the rise of the Forerunners to the fire of the Spartan programs, from the lies of the Covenant to the cold logic of the created, we've walked the ancient paths, decoded the wars, and stood on the edge of extinction alongside heroes who never asked to be remembered. But there, because they had to be. Halo has never just been about saving the world. It's been about what it costs to try. It's about the impossible choices, the ones made in silence. It's about Cortana's voice, still echoing in memory. It's about Chief taking one more step forward, even when there's no one left to follow him. And it's about you. Because Halo is a story that keeps growing, not just through games and books, but through community, through fans, through the people who care. So if this deep dive meant something to you, if you learned something, remembered something, or even saw the Halo universe in a new light, consider hitting the like button, drop a comment, share it with someone who still hums the theme song every time a war thought revs to life. We've only scratched the surface. There's more lore to explore, more secrets buried in Forerunner stone, more voices lost in the stars. And if you want to join us for the next journey, subscribe, hit that bell, Stay close, because the galaxy is vast. The fight is never truly over. And as long as we remember, the story continues. Until next time, Chief, out.